I'm going to start talk about Docker, microservices, gateways, and other stuff. We have 15 minutes only, so we'll make it quick. So, greetings everyone. My name is Ivan. I am a PHP developer from Ukraine with 5 years of experience. I have been working on different types of projects from small local business sites to worldwide applications. And today I'm going to share with you some of my thoughts and tricks that helps me to keep my environment clean. So we'll talk about basic application architectures and what's infrastructure requirements for those, Docker routing, how to connect your services into a single network, what tools can be added to your projects, how to optimize your services to use less hardware resources, what the developer expects to see in README file, and Docker-related tricks to make your life easier. So the first one, application architecture. In this section, we'll discuss a bit about our apps that we are working on and what infrastructures decisions fits best for them. Let's forget about the books and take a look into real cases that we have and that we met. So the first one is like a simple monolith applications built on LAMP stack or whatever. There is a easy to deploy project that has no dependencies except database and PHP, I guess. So there is no point to create any of infrastructure locally. Instead of installing all one by one, but if you really want to, you can use DigitalOcean instructions. Try to deploy it via already created solution, a Laravel home seed. This tool is a Vagrant container that is ready to provide infrastructure for your pet projects. It's well documented, has both Apache and Nginx servers on it, and you need just to map your project in your YAML file, and that's it. Next one is Monolith with some dependencies. Your project requires special tools, server configurations, or something else. If you don't need scaling, just use your own Vagrant box. It's easy to jump in for newbies and also keeps all documentation about requirements and configs in your build files. Just need to add them, steps, and that's it. As a plus, you'll have a simple routing and a full system, Unix system that can do anything. Next one is services around monoliths. So when your project grown up and you see that some components should be as a separate projects, you can start thinking about Docker. It can handle such type of services. You need just to correctly roll them into your monolith. But how? We'll talk about it later. And the last one is a service cloud that's mainstream for new applications, and knowledge of Docker is must for this type of project. So how to build infrastructure for that type of project? Talking about services, your frontend should send requests to your backend, right? But what service? What is the address and type of requests? If you will connect to your service directly, is it safe or not? That questions point us that we should organize our application with the gateway service. So, gateway is a service that communicates with front-end application and other layers of your microservice cloud. So it can be an entry point for your backend and also a middleware between other world and your backend mess. You can have different gateways for your front end, for your admin part, for your APIs, and so on. So the main responsibilities of gateway are keep a stable interface for front end, but allow fluent interfaces from backend side, keep data exchange with some format, rules, types, and so on, handle authorization and access control, know about the layer services, routing, and responsibilities, handling cache of responses, and change the format of input data if required. From my experience, I saw only two types of gateways. First is a simple, just authenticate and proxying request from frontend to service. A simple example is a gateway that supports GraphQL interface from frontend side and exchange data with services like via Kafka transport. Whole team supports this type of gateway. So whenever developers add some new functionality, he has to update it in gateway proxy. It has no dependencies on database and so on. The another one is gateway with business logic, models in it, and other dummy services that handles low-level logic. That gateway is supported by separate team often. Also, you can be a different type of your service layers, and every layer of your services should have their gateway in it. Before creating such set of services, we need to learn about Docker Compose routing a bit. So routing, how we should route our front-end, gateway, and services. From front-end perspective, it's easy to connect to single address, port, and use the same standards, REST, GraphQL, RPC, whatever. So you should open some ports in your Docker Compose. By default, the left side is available for outer world, right side is inner container of your ports. By default, from local machine, your service will be available from your local host or 0 IP address. Easy, right? So the next step is to connect your service to gateway. It can be done via connecting your containers and gateways with the same network, Docker network, that will not be accessible from your local machine. Also, there is 2 ways to manage it. You can create one network per gateway, let's call it gateway network, and share it with your services container, or you can create one network per service and add it to Gateway Compose. Both variants of those should work nice, but I prefer to keep network documentations on the gateway side, so dependencies on Composer and see the dependencies on Compose file, because gateway asks services for something, right? In other case, you'll have one network, so your Docker Compose file will not change on adding new service, but I prefer to list those network as services dependencies. So how to create network? Use Docker network create command with static subnet. It's kind of static IP for your network. Add it to your network section in service compose file, and also assign alias in your service container. Alias is very required, because you can send your request to your services via those alias, and add it in both network sections in compose of gateway. Here is the example of both composes. That's it. You'll have your service container should be available for gateway under the alias name that you're described in service container alias section. So just ping it. Speaking about of the naming, you can ask your infrastructure guys to configure hosts with the same names, so your project addresses will be the same for different environments, and it will be easy to handle with it. So routing is done. Let's go to the development. I think every developer should easily jump into new services or development process in general, so we can help them by adding some tools in our containers. I'm talking about 2 major things, debug and database management. So talking about debug, we'll speak about Xdebug and PHP development, because I'm a PHP developer. To enable Xdebug in your PHP FPM applications, you'll need to add some configurations to your environment and Docker Compose. Just install Xdebug in your container only for dev. Do not forget it. Add Xdebug configurations to environment variables. Server name should be unique. It will be used to define what service breakpoint from what service breakpoint it comes. Add static IP to your Compose file networking. and first of IP pool will be the address of Xdebug. Configure your IDE. Add interpreter from your compose file, select correct Docker service, configure your mappings, and so on. If you are using a command to run workers, you can pass those environment variables in those command. So you can Google how to configure Xdebug with Ubuntu and PHP Storm or whatever you use to get more details. I just want to notice that such tool as Xdebug should be configured on your skeleton from the blank, and further configurations should be available on your wiki page or project's README. Don't forget to remove Xdebug from your production containers. I heard about this. I heard story about the one project that guys just don't delete it in production and have 30-40% decrease of productivity of those containers. So be aware. The other thing is useful UIs. Also, there's a good idea to add UIs for development debug. When I came to my project, I have call with my team lead, and he spent a lot of time creating connections to database servers and so on. So do not spend time on this. Just include your tools as PHPMyAdmin, Postgres SQL admin, RMQ Kafka managers, and so on, right inside your project as dependent containers. So your developers can use these tools right after the project starts. Also, if you have a long-term project, you can include simple debug tools. I'm talking about Jaeger and so on to track your transactions between microservices. There is a big variety of them. My point is just to add them in your development environment. Please always configure those debug logs, errors to std out to let developers see what's going on under the hood of your container. Talking about optimization, how we can optimize our service cloud when they become big. A lot of microservices has a lot of dependencies. So if you have up and running database service for each of them, you'll reach your hardware limits, and you can test your services cloud locally. But not every service cloud have unique dependencies. In regular cases, you will have the same database service configurations, caching, etc. But how to use a single database service among your services? Let's create a repo that we call shared services and configure routing to let the databases usage in your container. Here is a simple example how you can route this once. I have not much time, but we'll briefly discuss it. Just create another Docker Compose with a database server in it, and create a networks to pass it to your containers. And about the README files, every developer has to read only README in your services. So you need to add additional information to it, add business logic of your service, some basic rules about how layers interact, full deployment nodes, and so on. Do we have more time? Guys, just ping me. Also about the tricks. First of all, use makefiles to create any commands and list any commands that you have. Oh, waiting more. We're here. Sorry. Is it all okay? Oh. Yeah, I'll continue. Thank you. So use makefiles to save useful commands there. Some initialization commands, cache cleaning commands, test run commands, and so on. Next one is use correct user in your container. By default, Docker container in your Docker container, you will see root as a user. It leads to some problems with files generated by your code. You should sudo own them to edit in your IDE. To forget about these problems, follow simple steps. Add your build args with your local user group and ID in your Docker Compose, and add those as environment variable in your Docker file. So I think that's it, and you'll have no problems with Composer and editing files. Also, copy your SSH keys in container. That's like not good from the perspective of I don't know how to say. That's not good in general, but every microservice cloud can have like additional libraries in it, and they are often private. And to like decrease the problems with accesses, just copy it. And also don't forget to add TTY and workdir in your Docker Compose files. Also about database migrators, my idea is to have shared database among services, but how we can create users and databases and keep it clean? We can use some kind of database migrator. Here is an example for the Postgres, but you can write your own script. So on every start of your Docker Compose YAML, those service will be up, and it's just executes your SQL files and leaves as migrator. So here is an example how your script can look like to create new databases. So you just need to pull the actual shared services, and that's it. It will be ready. So yeah, I think I'm over. And do you guys have some questions about my topic? Would you recommend a GUI tool for Docker management, and which one? Web-based or otherwise? I don't even know why you need some like GUI for Docker, because most of your local environments are just Docker composes, and it's easy to up. And if you want to train some DevOps stuff, just use I don't know, popular services, but in general, command line is enough. We didn't see your code you attached, I guess, because low bandwidth. I don't know. I don't see the problems for our admins. Other questions, guys? Because I'm just running out of time to do not mess up. For your VPS, where you frequently make changes and don't want to give someone SSH. Where you frequently make changes and don't allow someone just work with Docker containers. Oh, I don't get what you mean, but I'm talking about the local environment. I don't think that Docker Compose files should be used in your production environments, because there is pretty much like more fluid tools that can develop and build your containers and handle it. So I suggest to use Docker Composes only on your local environment. So I think thank you for listening, guys. I think it's at the end for me. So have a good evening. Bye.